All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations Fall of Cybertron Autobot Whirl. Now, Whirl himself was not actually in the Fall of Cybertron games, but basically what they did in the Generations toy line was they had all the molds from the previous year that they had used to make the Fall of Cybertron Bruticus design, and then they just re-released those with new color schemes and new head sculpts and some fun new weapons, which we'll talk about as a Wreckers team that combined to become Ruination. Whirl is the only one of them that I actually have. I didn't really go in either of these combiners because I don't think that they looked particularly good. But, you know, I wanted a Whirl for my collection, and the Vortex mold looked like one of the less weak of the lot there. So you know, he's an okay figure. I talked about this a little bit in my last review with Fall of Cybertron Shockwave, but there was something going on with like plastic prices at the time where there was kind of a significant drop in quality of, like, you know, amount of plastic and also amount of like moving parts on Transformers figures around the time, and I feel like that's no more evident than with the Fall Cybertron Bruticus team, which as a result would continue on to the Ruination team. But yeah, it's an okay figure. I do kind of like the Cybertronian helicopter mode. It definitely looks accurate to what Vortex looked like in the game, and it's got a nice spinning rotor there. I do like the gun that's kind of, you know, bent down so it can actually be shooting things on the ground. I think that you can, if you want, you can actually put that away too, so you can flip it inside. He also has like his combined mode hand in there, so it's a little bit tight in terms of clearance, but it does actually fit. So if you just want the helicopter without the gun, you can definitely do that. It's nice to have that option, though I do think it looks cooler with the gun out, but that's pretty cool nonetheless. And yeah, you know, obviously it still looks a lot like an Earth helicopter, but you know, it's kind of got a Cybertronian spin to it. But yeah, it's an okay alt mode. Now he does come with some pretty fun weapons here. He comes with the same two swords that I believe also came with Vortex, but then the Ruination guys also came with an additional weapon each that was pretty fun. And yeah, in the case of Whirl here, he comes with this pretty cool blaster thing here, where if you pull this like little, I don't know, slider forward, it causes this piece to spin, which is a pretty satisfying mechanism to do. And yeah, I don't necessarily like it for him because I don't think that this figure in and of itself is all that great, but it's a fun weapon to have and just like give to my other figures. And same with the swords, honestly. Like, these were the same ones that came with Vortex, but they are nicely painted. I do like the sort of like techie Cybertronian detail on there, and I think that they look pretty nice in blue. They work as good, like, you know, sort of stinger weapons for Bumblebee, having him hold these two swords. I feel like that looks pretty cool. But yeah, so good weapons that come with this figure. The figure itself, not amazing, but we'll get into it. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, so you can see what it looks like with an average modern deluxe here. And for an average modern helicopter deluxe, here he is with Legacy United Shard, for whatever that's worth. And then here he is with the only other sort of, you know, Bruticus / Ruination team member that I have, which is the Swindle mold, which was also used for Roadbuster. And yeah, I mean, he's a better figure than him. Neither of these guys are great, but I feel like this is one of the worst ones. Well, I don't know about that, actually. I don't have the other ones. The impression I always got were that Vortex and Whirl, or Vortex and the Vortex and Blastoff molds were okay, and the rest of them were kind of not great. But yeah, you know, that's what he looks like with him, for whatever that's worth. And then here he is with our more modern Generations Whirl from Thrilling 30, who only came out like a year or two later, which is pretty funny. I guess Thrilling 30, it must have been, you know, 2014. So I guess that would only be a year after this guy, because this guy came out in 2013. And yeah, they figured out whatever problem they were working on, because the Thrilling 30 figures are all generally great. But, you know, obviously he's a Voyager, he's a deluxe, so it's not a totally fair comparison, but I like this guy a lot better as a Whirl. Now, in terms of the weapons, you can notionally store them. I mean, there is a place for them all to go. You can basically, like, you know, on the Vortex mold, you just plugged in the swords on either ends of these bits here, which looks a little bit ridiculous, but not that crazy for a Cybertronian mode. But, you know, because at least it's like symmetrical. For Whirl, they want you to just like take this sword and plug it into the other sword so that you free up this port for his big, ridiculous weapon here. And yeah, I mean, I've ended up tightening up the pegs on this weapon because it doesn't really work for a lot of other figures like straight out of the box because they're a little bit too loose. But now as a result, it doesn't really work super well for Whirl. But yeah, I think that looks super stupid, so I don't really like that. But there's a variety of pegs and ports on all these weapons, so you can kind of experiment around with it and try to find a better way to do it. But again, I just tend to keep these weapons in a box separately for other figures to hold. I don't think they work super well with Whirl, but even though I don't have the different Bruticus modes or the other Ruination guys, whichever, I'll still show off his limb modes just for posterity's sake. They're pretty easy to get to. For the arm mode, basically what you do is just untab this section here and then double hinge down this section, and it will kind of lock in just like that. Although these tabs are really tight, so I have a hard time actually getting them tabbed in sometimes. But yeah, you just plug it in like that. You can collapse the rotors, and then you basically just want to flip in the gun and flip out his karate chop action hand. There's no action feature, it just looks stupid. And then you can just rotate this and flip out the combiner peg. And there's his arm mode. It looks better than Blastoff's arm mode, but yeah, the karate chop hand is really dumb looking. And yeah, you get a little bit of articulation at the elbow, but it's a little bit like low. And yeah, I mean, this combiner as a whole was just kind of a hot mess, but what can you do? And then in terms of leg mode, it's pretty much the same. You just flip the hand back in and then flip the gun back out. I guess you could leave the gun collapsed too if you want. All the pictures I've seen have the gun out, but basically you just rotate this forward and then fold it up like that, and then fold up the combiner peg. And there's his leg mode. It's nice that they were at least doing the Scramble City thing for these guys, which they didn't really have to do because, to be accurate to the games, they just became their kind of traditional Bruticus arrangement there. But at least since they did it, this way, they could have a different arrangement for the Ruination team. But yeah, it's still kind of stupid looking, but it's a little bit better than the arm mode, I feel like. But yeah, to get on to the rest of the transformation, basically you want to collapse this section back up. That's pretty much just for the combine mode, and then you want to split these sections here, flip the gun back in, and then rotate them around like this to become the legs. Take these little sections and then just rotate them to the back. They're on a really tight joint there, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. And then you want to take this section here, kind of untab it, and this top section here is going to be the arms. So you flip it around like that so they'll click into place, rotate them around at the waist. And then you want to unfold this section and bring it down and then rotate it around like that. So the hand's facing forward, and then flip this section over with the rotor. So it's just kind of awkwardly sitting off of his arm like that. But you just want to do that on both sides here, just so it's flipped around. Very awkward, skinny arms, but we'll talk about it. And then you take this section and flip it to the back like that, and then take his head and flip it down from the back cavity there. And there we have Whirl in his robot mode. And yeah, he looks okay. I'd say the biggest weakness of this figure are the arms, how like super awkward and skinny and then also weirdly panely they are. Especially this one with the big like rotor blades just sticking off of it is super inelegant and just kind of gets in the way. I do like the head sculpt here that they put on this figure. Obviously this is different from the Vortex head sculpt, but it works nicely for Whirl there. In terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate around and it can look up a pretty decent amount for how it like folds up for transformation. The shoulders are on ball joints, which can rotate around and go out to the side. He's got a bicep swivel right here, under 90 degrees of bend at the elbow, and they also weirdly look like they're like chicken leg bent up all the time, which is ugly, but whatever. And then obviously the rotors are, get in the way. He does have this waist piece that you can kind of fold up to accommodate for the hip movement. The hips are just on ball joints, which can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, this piece back into place. He's got a double jointed knee technically, so you can kind of bend it up like that. Really, you're supposed to be using this top joint, which has these kind of like soft ratchets, although because it has the soft ratchets, this joint always wants to activate first, but that really is just meant to be a transformation joint, and he gets still a pretty decent knee bend without that, and then you can just like, pull a little bit extra further with that second joint, and then nothing at the feet. They're just, sculpted in place at a slight A stance there. So, he looks okay. Really, just I think that the arms are the biggest weakness of this figure. He can obviously hold his weapons here. You can give him these really cool looking swords. Either, you can do the double sword thing, so he's got like a staff, and then you can give him the big weapon here, which I think he looks pretty cool holding, but I think pretty much anyone looks pretty cool holding this weapon, and I think it looks better in other figures. But yeah, you've got that to mess around with. He doesn't really have a lot in the way of storage places for these, because where they plugged in robot mode are just like now on the back of his legs, so you can plug those on here, but then they kind of bump up to so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we can store the weapons just, like that on his back here. Doesn't really work. So, for all the pegs and ports that these weapons have, they couldn't just like put a couple ports on the back section here. I don't know. So yeah, no, not really great storage there, but yeah, that's how that's supposed to work. I mean, that's not how it's supposed to work. I think that you're just supposed to have him hold the weapons, not store them at all. But you do, I guess, have a knee gun if you want to do that on only his left leg. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe and Shard, just so you can see what he looks like with an average size deluxe there. So you can see pretty much average deluxe height. He's just very hollow in sections and definitely has less plastic. Like he's significantly lighter than even like a the Siege mold figure. I know he's Kingdom, but you know what I mean. But yeah, that's what he looks like with them. Here he is again with Whirl, just so you can see what he looks like with a better version of the character. And here he is again with Swindle, who, he's better than Swindle. Swindle's even worse than he is, but yeah, he's not a great figure, all things considered. He's, again, I think one of the better of these figures in terms of the mold, at least of the Bruticus guys. I think there are better Fall of Cybertron figures. But yeah, he is not great. But honestly, I like him just for having the cool weapons, and it's nice to have these for my other figures, even if the figure that they actually came with is not great. But yeah, there's some stuff to like about this mold, but overall, I think it's a little bit weak, all things considered. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Fall of Cybertron Autobot Whirl.